afternoon, everybody, and I was going to say Happy International Women's Day if there was any ladies that were here.
Sorka's there.
Sorka's there, where is she? Sorka, Happy International Women's Day. But it's an important day both in Ireland and internationally, and it's important that we take the opportunity to recognise progress that has been made and to recognise women that have gone before us in terms of making great strides that helped support us. But obviously there's many other issues that we need to address. And we know that the government today had a special cabinet meeting in relation to announcing initiatives, like, for example, ratifying the Istanbul Convention, and both myself and Deputy O'Callaghan spoke on this last week in the Dáil. It's a very important step. We were quite behind in Ireland in terms of ratifying, and there's only 12 countries that have been left, and of course that's very welcome, but putting in practical measures to support women is more important. It can't be just about announcements. It's actually about delivery, and it's about making positive steps to support women. And while we always on International Women's Day acknowledge the women that went before us, like Countess Markovich over on my right hand side, who absolutely inspires every one of us as we come in to do our daily work and weekly work in the Dáil, it's about supporting vulnerable women also. And there is no more vulnerable women than those that are caught in domestic violence situations. And with that in mind, my colleague and myself, Deputy O'Callaghan, are bringing forward a bill that Deputy O'Callaghan is going to outline. But I also want to mention the shared maternity leave bill that myself and Deputy Lisa Chambers introduced in the Dáil last year. That's a really important bill, because essentially a lot of the reasons why women cannot progress within their careers in business or in politics is because of childcare. Childcare is a very significant obstacle to women going forward, and we feel by parents being able to share childcare that would be a very positive step in the right direction. So the bill that we are introducing today, it's a small step, but it's very significant in terms of supporting the victims of domestic violence. And when we look at the statistics, and we see that almost 2/3 of women who die violently in Ireland, that's at the hands of their current or former partner. That's absolutely shocking. So it's obviously a situation that we absolutely need to address. So I'm going to hand over to Jim now just to discuss that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Fiona. As Fiona said, the reason we're here in part is because today Fianna Fáil is publishing the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. And this bill has its origins in the tragic events that happened back in August 2016 when Clodagh Hall and her 3 sons were murdered. And also it has its origins in the very moving interview that Clodagh's sister Jacqueline and her mother Mary gave to Claire Byrne, I think around 10 days ago. What was apparent from that interview is that although the crime of familicide has happened in Ireland, we really don't adequately respond to it through our statutory regime. Traditionally what happens is that when a tragic murder such as that happens, the Gardaí go to the place of the crime and they quickly identify that the person responsible is himself also dead. Consequently, the only statements that are really taken by Garda Síochána are statements in respect of the people who discovered the tragic scene when they entered the house, and limited statements for the purpose of preparing for the inquest. The coroner's inquest is the only statutory response that the state has to those tragic murders. The purpose of this bill is to try to introduce into the Irish legal regime the same system that operates in the UK, where since 2011 in the UK, the Secretary of State has been able to order that there be a domestic homicide review in circumstances as happened with Clodagh's murder. The purpose of the bill is that we will provide power to the Minister for Justice to order a domestic homicide review should it appear to him that a death has occurred as a result of the violence or the abuse or the neglect of a family member or someone with whom the deceased was in an intimate relationship. We don't have that at present in the Irish legal system. I think it's important to point out, though, that the process and the purpose of the review is not in order to apportion blame. It's not a criminal process. The purpose of the review, and this is stated in fact in the UK legislation, is to learn lessons from what occurred. And in the legislation that I'm putting forward along with Fiona and Lorraine, we're saying that the purpose of the review and any report produced should be to identify the circumstances surrounding the deaths and to report on any lessons that can be learned from them. So it's not an interference in the criminal justice process, but it is an important process. Under the legislation, the Minister will be able to direct that certain statutory agencies cooperate. The Minister will be able to appoint a person he believes is suitably qualified to carry out the investigations, and the family members of the deceased will be able to make submissions. And then a report will be produced, and it gives the Minister power to provide it to the family and to publish it unless he believes that publication is not merited for reasons that he would have to state. So that's the general overview of it. It's an amendment to the Domestic Violence Act that was enacted and commenced last year. It seeks to put in a new section into it, and I think it's a considerable contribution towards what Fiona was talking about, trying to respond to and deal with, unfortunately, the fact that there is considerable violence against women perpetrated by their partners.
Jim, some families in Northern Ireland actually again said to Karen Bradley should resign. What's Fianna Fáil's position? Should she resign?
Well, it has been a very difficult time for the families of victims of the security forces in Northern Ireland, and I think Secretary of State Bradley's comments were very insensitive. I think they were wrong, and I think they were misleading. However, she has apologised for them. She seems to have stated that it was a mistake what she said. I heard her on the radio this morning stating that if she could turn the clock back prior to what she said in the House of Commons, she would do so. So, I think by apologising in such a profuse way, that I think that is sufficient. But certainly, she needs to be very careful in terms of what she says in the future.
It doesn't seem to be sufficient for the families. I mean, the fact that it was said that it's common, she probably had knowledge of the question beforehand, but had the statement prepared most likely. And she stood up today and said that she didn't mean what she said or that she believed it. But then, why say it? I mean, if it's not going to be good enough for justice or for the families, why should she continue to proceed to support the parties anyway?
Well, we're not giving her our support, but I suppose the question is, are Fianna Fáil calling on her to resign? And we're not, but I do recognise that what she said was completely inappropriate. It is ultimately a matter for Prime Minister May as to whether or not Prime Minister May has confidence in her. Certainly, if I was her boss, I would have serious concerns about how she performed her functions over the past 2 days. And, when you're a politician, particularly if you're in the Parliament, but no matter where you are, you have to be extremely careful about what you say. And you have to choose your words very carefully, and she didn't. And she certainly doesn't inspire me or Fianna Fáil with confidence. But whether she's to resign or not, or whether she should be sacked, that's a matter for Prime Minister May.
Sorry, in relation to this bill, Jim, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, I'm sure being so punctilious, you probably have it in it. But say the family decides that it doesn't want such an investigation to be launched, is the onus on the state to initiate such an inquiry, or can that be left to
the discretion is given to the Minister. The Minister for Justice can decide once a death occurs, if it's in his opinion that death has been caused through the neglect, abuse or violence of others, he can order an inquiry. He doesn't have to in every case, and I assume a Minister in reaching his decision on that will take into account submissions from the family, and it does provide for the families to be able to make submissions. Sorry, Kevin.
No, you're kind of the opposite almost of Harry's question in a way. You're kind of putting all the emphasis on the Minister there. It's likely the vast majority of families would actually demand a review in these kind of scenarios because of more answers. So what's the kind of the threshold for the Minister to decide? There's going to be public uproar over every case. He has to decide, or she has to decide whether to have a review or not. So what kind of in-out do they have?
Look, I think we have to be careful when we draft laws that it shouldn't be the case that all the pressure is put on families to launch a campaign, and as a result of their campaign, when pressure is put on the Minister, that the Minister is then forced to order a review. That shouldn't happen. We need a statutory regime that is sort of neutral, but which the Minister must decide on the basis of the information available to him. So the provision in Section 1 says that if he is of the opinion that the death or deaths of a person was caused through the abuse, neglect or violence of a person whom they're in an intimate relationship with or their civil partner, but he can order a review. But that wouldn't happen in a situation where the person suspected of the crime was alive and the matter was being investigated by An Garda Síochána. It is really a provision to deal with the tragic circumstances that happened to Clodagh Hall and have happened in other certain limited situations.
Jim, can I start with the review carried out by Gardaí?
No, it could be, but it'll be up to the Minister to appoint a suitably qualified person. That's what the bill says. The suitably qualified person will make a determination in respect of it. And also in the bill it says that the Minister can direct certain individuals to participate, persons such as in terms of persons who could participate in it, you've got people who are in Garda Síochána, government departments, the HSE and TUSA.
It's been in place in the UK since 2011.
It came in 2004 in the UK, but it only commenced in 2011. So,
and have there been many of these reports?
Yes, there have been. I spoke to a man who was on the Claire Byrne show on Monday night, and he's heavily involved in it. And he said there's been over 200 of them since it happened in 2011. You know? Okay,
just a couple of questions. And like, if you mentioned Kexford Meal or Karen Bradley, just to know that before the IRS.
Well, chula me a Karen in radio in you, agus Dirche gur Brown here Cadaharla in yes in Parliament, agus in Mahorm fame, agus in Mahorm Fianna Fáil. Tá 5 egg on Tara, tá 5 egg on Realtas. Ní beg me an seo chun a lauert ó Cláchí Dullarás as an frisht.
Agus an sin just catch Queen Mille a Tábhair staff living out just Nini come Queen Mille cut off the living.
Well, mar dúirt me, 3 bhliain ó hin for Clodagh Hall bus agus Túr Bhach agus dún bharg a far chéile iad ag an am sin agus chur altacht ar an stéis an dún bharg chuig a drufór ar an telefís cúpla lá hin le Claire Byrne agus dúirt sí agus a bháthair ag an am sin tá a lán ceisne gan freagart agus mar sin faoin bille Fianna Fáil bheith cúilt ag an Tara fiosrapáin a ordú tar éis dún bharú cosúla Cadathar le Clodagh Hall agus ag an am sin tar éis sin beidh tuairisc áil freisin tuairisc don Clan agus don Stás freisin.
Anything else? Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. And happy International Women's Day, sir. Happy International Women's Day.
Lorraine, do you want to do? I just asked you to do. Oh, hey, McGrath. Well, just